Hey, are you asleep at the wheel? There are tons of benefits associated with automating your savings and your investing, automating your budgeting. There are so many great benefits. But are you so focused on the benefits that maybe you might not be aware of the risks? That's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm Leah Hadley. I'm the founder of Great Lakes Investment Management and Great Lakes Divorce Financial Solutions. And I help women who have spent most of their lives putting everyone else first to make the most of their money by providing them with compassionate financial guidance and strategic investment management. So today we're talking about 5 risks that you may not be paying attention to when you're managing your money on autopilot. And the first I want to talk about is interest rates, because this has been a big one over the last year. When we first meet with financial planning clients, the very first thing that we do is really get to know those clients, get to know their goals, get to know what's important to them, what their priorities are. And after we go through a little process of getting to know them and ultimately what their objectives are for the financial planning process, we then get a clear picture of their current financial situation. And one of the things that is coming up more frequently is those who have variable interest rate debt may or may not be aware of how much the interest rates have increased on that debt over the last year. And so if you're not paying attention and you have variable interest rate debt, your debt may be costing you significantly more this year and last year than it did the prior year, right? And so it's really important to be paying attention to how am I, as my overall financial picture, how am I interacting with interest rates? Where are interest rates impacting me? And debt is one of those places. But of course, there's the flip side too. And I will say that I'm very consistently seeing folks who have great savings that are sitting in the bank, but aren't earning much in terms of interest rates. Well, with interest rates having gone up so much over the last year, we've had years of complaining that, you can't earn much on your savings, but now there are opportunities to earn on your savings. And if you're not paying attention to making adjustments, maybe your particular bank or the kind of account that you're in doesn't have favorable rates, but they exist out there, right? And so you might be losing out on great interest rate opportunities, getting your money to work harder for you if you're not paying attention, right? The second risk I want to highlight is an overconcentrated stock position. I would say this comes up most often when I'm working with people who participate in a stock compensation program with their employer. Maybe they participate in an employee stock purchase plan. But it also comes up when maybe a parent participated in a particular stock compensation plan or worked for a company for a long time, and then the client inherits that stock position. So there's a lot of risk associated with having your wealth concentrated in one individual company. Kind of like putting all your eggs in one basket, right? Hopefully, that particular company does very well. But a lot of what we do when we manage portfolios for people is really look at how do we manage the risk. And that is one of the risks that is something that we're always looking at, is making sure that nobody has too much exposure to any one individual company, but we're also looking at one area of the market, right? One kind of industry, one kind of company, things like this. And so that's a risk that happens very regularly if somebody is being awarded stock as part of their compensation on a regular basis, but they don't have a strategy in place to make sure that they are then diversifying that portfolio over time. And similarly, I guess I shouldn't say similarly, because sometimes it's actually like even an emotional attachment to a stock that might be inherited, or there's some other connection there. There may be another reason why somebody might be maintaining that position. Could be that there's a low cost basis, but there are strategies in place that you can still use regardless of what the situation is or the circumstances under which that you receive that stock. There's certainly strategies that you can implement to make sure that you don't have all your eggs in one basket, and that you really are looking at your overall wealth and protecting yourself from having that concentrated position, right? Along the same lines, but a little different, is what I'm seeing in investment portfolios. Particularly, I would say it comes up with people who maybe have managed their investments themselves for a while, but it also comes up with folks who use a financial advisor who sell product on a commission basis. And that is that their portfolio no longer reflects their investor profile or their risk objective, how comfortable they are with market volatility. They made an investment at one time, and maybe they have their investments set up to automatically reinvest dividends and automatically reinvest interest, but they're not necessarily looking at the overall allocation of what they hold. And so a lot of times that gets out of balance because there are different areas of the market that perform differently in different economic climates. Certainly over the last couple of years, we've seen that where during COVID, we saw huge growth in some of the growth companies, whereas we saw, a significant weakness in that area of the market last year. But there's a lot of different dynamics at play. And when you invest, you don't want that just set it up one time and forget it kind of strategy, because then what I often see happening is people getting way out of balance relative to what they're comfortable with, right? Well, when that happens and we see the market volatility that we've seen over the last year, and if you ended up with an over-concentrated position in, like, let's say you were more growth focused than what was right for your particular risk profile, that's when people start to sell at a loss because they're feeling emotional, feeling nervous about the market. So they were not positioned well for the strategy that is appropriate for them to begin with. And then they're seeing that increase in volatility and they're getting nervous. They don't really have a good strategy in place. And so that's significant risk, is getting out of alignment and then having those emotional responses to market fluctuation. So that's an important one to make sure that you're paying attention to. Underfunding your retirement is the fourth risk I want to talk about. And this comes up in a few different ways. I see it come up in terms of people not necessarily really thinking through what their retirement goals are. And especially if you're young, that could feel very far away. And I completely understand where that may come from. It may also come from having some competing goals, right? If you're raising children or buying a house, sometimes there's just so many competing goals for your money that maybe you are limiting how much you're putting in your retirement accounts. And a lot of times people just set up those retirement accounts for maybe a percentage of their paycheck, and then they don't necessarily look at it again. But the nice thing is, with inflation going up, we've also seen the IRS increase the limits that are available in terms of how much we can put into retirement accounts. And so really taking a look at least once a year and making sure that the amount that you're contributing to your retirement accounts is in alignment with those goals that you have for retirement. And again, those may evolve, those may change. And so that means that your strategy or the amount that you're contributing may also need to evolve or change, right? And when I talk about strategy, I'm really looking at what are the investments held within that account. That can also lead to underfunding. So if you're too conservative in your investment strategy and you're not getting the kind of returns that you need to hit those goals, that can also be a risk, right? So underfunding that retirement account is a risk that commonly occurs when people are just on autopilot, set up those retirement contributions and haven't really looked back at them or thought much about them to make sure they're really in alignment with their goals. And last but not least, I want to talk about inadequate insurance protection. And I would say this comes up very regularly for a variety of different reasons throughout the year, but especially when people are going through life changes. The most common time when we are reviewing insurance for clients is when they have open enrollment with their employer. A lot of times we're looking at what are their health insurance options, what are the options that are available to them. We're really talking about, what are the concerns, what's come up over the last year, if there's any health related issues, but also what are the benefits that are available to them, and making sure that they're really optimizing and maximizing what they're getting there. But sometimes when things happen in your life, there may be a reason why you find that disability insurance is becoming more important and you need to make sure that you have appropriate coverage there. Or life insurance, especially young families as they're expanding and they have children and they want to make sure their children are taken care of in case they, were to pass away. Really thinking about not just protecting yourself and your income, when we're talking about disability insurance, but also your loved ones and what's really important to you in terms of providing coverage if you were to pass away, right? So these are all areas that when we don't really take the time to think about how our life has changed, how offerings have changed. Sometimes it's literally in the time that I started working with individuals in 2012. And even just during that period of time, I've seen significant changes in terms of insurance offerings, right? And so even looking at what's available now, which versus what was available when I initially invested in my insurance. Right. One of the things that is along the same lines of that insurance topic, though, is I often see people's PNC insurance creeping up on them. And they are surprised when they go back and realize that, hey, I'm paying a whole lot more for my car insurance than I realized. And a lot of times it's just as simple as shopping it with an independent insurance broker to get a better price in terms of the property and casualty insurance that you need. So there are a lot of opportunities when it comes to insurance, making sure that we're protecting that we want to protect. And we're doing it at a cost that's a reasonable cost. And we can be strategic, but the biggest thing in being strategic is being aware, being mindful, and not just setting up that policy and like, all right, it worked for me 20 years ago, it's going to work for me today. Well, that may or may not be the case, right? So the risks that we talked about today were increase in variable interest rates, and that can have an impact both on your debt as well as on your savings. Overconcentration in an individual stock, which most commonly comes up when people are receiving compensation in the form of stock, or they're participating in an employee stock purchase plan, or maybe they've inherited a position in an individual stock. A portfolio that does not reflect your risk profile. And again, we often see that if folks were sold investments for the kind of financial advisor that sells product, but may not necessarily be working with you on an ongoing basis to make sure that you're staying in balance. It also happens a lot of times with people who are managing their investments on their own that may not be paying attention to how the different market movements are impacting their overall portfolio. Underfunding your retirement account. And a lot of times, again, that's just about not having clarity around what you want retirement to look like, but also not keeping up with inflation and not keeping up with the fact that you can actually increase your contributions to your retirement accounts in some years. And then inadequate insurance protection. And again, we really want to look at what are we trying to protect when it comes to insurance. And when we get clear on what we want to protect when it comes to insurance, then it's easier to make some decisions about what's going to be best for me and my family. Financial planning is really all about optimizing your financial situation, so you can more efficiently achieve your financial goals. So if you are feeling like one of these areas that I talked about today be helpful to explore a little deeper, you need some more information, you really just want to make sure that you're minimizing the risks in your financial situation, send me a private message. I'm always happy to have that connection, and then we can go from there.